My brother stole my credit card after getting me drunk, then gambled away all my money while I slept. When I confronted him, he shrugged his shoulders and said, "You let me back into your life after everything. What did you expect?" I just stared at him. That was 7 weeks ago. Yesterday, he cut off his ankle monitor and ran. My brother and I have never gotten along, and this is because since day one, he has gone out of his way to make my life miserable. He quickly saw that being younger made our parents believe him more than me, so he'd lie about me a lot. He'd do things like beat himself up and tell our parents I caused the bruises. I'd of course get in trouble, and he'd get ice cream as compensation. Somehow, despite this, I never hated him until he turned 18 and began asking me for money. A lot of money. It went from me ordering him takeout once a week to every day to him demanding a $500 weekly allowance. I had a good job and could afford this, but I didn't want to. Getting money handed to him wouldn't serve him in the long run. I told him so, and to my surprise, he accepted my response. Fast forward to next week when he came over to hang out. It was all smiles and laughs until the next morning when $250 was missing from my wallet. At first I didn't want to believe it, but when I checked my nanny cams, I saw him sneak into my room while I was sleeping. To my horror, he took not only the money, but he went through my drawers and took my wife's gold necklace too. I immediately called him, demanding he gives everything back. I will call the police if he doesn't, and if he ever does anything like that again, I will cut him off. He tried to deny he did it at first, but he soon gave in. He apologized and promised to never try anything again, but as I'm sure you can guess, he did not stick to his word. A few months later, it was my daughter's first birthday. At some point, I went upstairs to get the camera for photos when I saw him ripping open and going through the envelopes my friends and family gave to us. He was taking all the cash out of them and stuffing them in his pocket. I snapped my fingers, and when he saw me, he froze, but he didn't apologize. Instead, he started begging me to let him keep the money, and when I told him no, he got mad. He punched my daughter's pram and hurt his hand in the process. I was forced to kick him out and proceeded to send him a super angry text that same day, telling him I'm going no contact. I almost felt guilty, because family is family, but then a week later, his girlfriend broke up with him because of the incident. And when he called me to blame me for her breaking up with him, I realized I made the right choice. My life went on without him, and for the next 3 years, everything was great. I was even able to put a down payment on a house because I had the money ever since I stopped giving him so much. But then a few months ago, he reached out. He said he saw my Facebook post about the down payment and asked why I never told him. I didn't want to respond, but I gave him the courtesy and reminded him of everything. Surprisingly, he apologized. He said he wants to make things right and invited me for lunch. I was apprehensive, but reluctantly agreed. We had a pleasant catch-up, but the fact he kept talking about money problems and how he could use some told me he still saw me as a cash cow. Despite this, he was apologetic, and I told him that as long as he never did anything shady or asked for a dime again, I'd let him back in my life. He was ecstatic, overjoyed. He caused a whole scene. He was that happy. Looking back, there was definitely an ulterior motive there. Still, the first month after was perfectly fine. We sometimes spoke, went to an all-you-can-eat buffet once, and were slowly rebuilding a relationship. But then last week I went out to a bar with him, and that's when I realized letting him back into my life was the biggest mistake I ever made. We were talking, drinking, and as the night progressed, he bought me more and more shots. And I mean, who am I to turn down free alcohol? My wife knew I was staying at his place too, so I could let loose. We made our way back to his around 3 a.m. I was way more hammered than him, and as soon as we got in, I just passed out on his couch. I woke up at 9 to him making breakfast and offering to call me a cab home. He had never been this kind towards me. I should have known something was up. However, my critical thinking had been replaced with hangover symptoms, so I just ate and got in the cab. But then, while in the cab, I realized something. I'd forgotten to check if I had my wallet. I quickly patted myself down, and thankfully, I had it. But then I opened it. At first, everything seemed fine, but my credit card looked a little odd. I took it out, and that's when horror washed upon my face. My brother had swapped out my credit card for his old expired one. I panicked. I immediately went onto my bank account, where I saw that I already had $5,000 less than last night. To make matters worse, right as I was checking, I saw a notification appear. $2,300 withdrawal from ATM. Was this you? I wasted no time, calling my bank to block my card. But then, as luck would have it, as my phone was ringing, it ran out of battery and died. So there I was, hungover, driving home, minutes away from having my bank account cleared out, and no way to stop it. I asked the cab driver if I could use his phone to make an emergency call. He looked at me in the rearview mirror and said it was against company policy. I showed him the banking notifications on my dead phone and explained the situation. He still refused. I was getting desperate, so I promised him a $50 tip if he'd let me use his phone for just 1 minute. That finally did the trick. He handed me his phone, and I called my bank's fraud department. The customer service rep asked for my account number and security questions. With my pounding headache and stress, I couldn't remember the answers exactly. They said they couldn't help without proper verification and suggested I visit a branch in person. I asked the driver to take me to the nearest branch of my bank instead of home. When we arrived, I realized another problem. I didn't have my ID. I checked my pockets again, and my wallet was lighter than it should be. My brother had taken my driver's license too. I approached the teller anyway and explained my situation. She was sympathetic, but explained they couldn't do much without proper identification. I asked if I could call my wife to bring my passport. The teller agreed to let me use the bank phone. My wife was understandably frustrated. She had warned me about trusting my brother again, but she agreed to bring my passport and a backup phone. While waiting, I checked the banking app on a bank computer they let me use. My brother had withdrawn another $3,200 from an ATM across town. When my wife arrived, I was able to properly verify my identity and freeze the account. The bank manager came over to help us file a fraud report. That's when things got complicated. Since my brother was family, and I had technically given him access to my card the night before by being too drunk to protect it, the manager explained this would be treated as a family dispute rather than straightforward fraud. We'd need to file a police report to strengthen our case. My wife drove us to the nearest police station, where I explained the situation to an officer. He seemed skeptical at first, suggesting it could be a misunderstanding between brothers. I showed him the nanny cam footage from the previous theft years ago on my backup phone, explaining this was a pattern of behavior. That changed his attitude immediately. He took the report seriously and said they'd contact my brother. When they called him from the station, my brother had the audacity to claim I had given him permission to use the card. Said it was repayment for an old debt I owed him. There was no debt. There never had been. But now it was his word against mine. I checked my email hoping to find bank notifications with IP addresses or something that could prove it was him using my card. Instead, I discovered he'd somehow accessed my email account too and deleted all bank alerts. I realized he must have watched me enter my email password previously or used password recovery options by guessing my security questions, something that would be easy for someone who knew personal details about my life. This had happened before I added two-factor authentication to my accounts, which I immediately did after this incident. A police officer suggested I contact the bank's fraud department directly for details of the transactions. They were able to provide locations and timestamps of the withdrawals, which clearly showed activity in areas near my brother's apartment while I was still asleep at his place. The fraud investigator also told me something that made my blood boil. My brother had attempted to increase my credit limit online. He wasn't just taking what was in my account, he was trying to access even more credit in my name. I immediately changed all my passwords, security questions, and added two-factor authentication to everything. Then I tried calling my brother directly, straight to voicemail of course. I left a message demanding he return the money, but I knew he wouldn't respond. I decided to go to his apartment directly. When I arrived, his landlord was outside working on the building. I asked if my brother was home, and he told me my brother had packed up and left that morning with a bunch of bags. Said he mentioned staying with someone named Tyler. The name sounded familiar. I scrolled through my brother's social media and found a post from a few months back where he'd tagged this Tyler guy. I found Tyler's profile, which thankfully listed his workplace. It wasn't much, but it was a lead. I drove to the restaurant where Tyler worked and waited until I saw him. I approached him directly and asked about my brother. Tyler claimed he hadn't seen him in weeks, but as we were talking, I glanced past him into the staff area and spotted my brother's distinctive leather jacket hanging on a hook. I called him out on the lie, and Tyler got nervous. He admitted my brother was actually hiding in the bathroom. I demanded Tyler get him immediately immediately, or I'd call the police to report him as an accessory to theft. A few minutes later, my brother emerged from the back room with this smug expression on his face, like this was all some kind of game. He casually asked what I wanted, acting like he hadn't just stolen thousands of dollars from me. You know exactly why I'm here, I told him. You stole my credit card and emptied my account. He brushed off my accusation with a shrug. I didn't steal anything. You owed me that money for years of ignoring my needs while you live your perfect little life. I pulled out my phone and showed him the police report I filed. This isn't a game anymore. This is fraud, identity theft, and straight up robbery. The police are already involved. The smirk vanished from his face instantly. He glanced at Tyler, who was pretending to be busy wiping down a nearby table while obviously eavesdropping. My brother lowered his voice and suddenly changed his tone. Look, I can give you half the money back today, but I need the rest for some medical bills that can't wait. Medical bills? What medical bills? I asked, already knowing this was probably another lie. I've been having these issues. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you wouldn't believe me, he said, pulling out his phone. I have the documents right here. As he scrolled through his phone trying to find these supposed medical records, he accidentally opened his shopping cart instead. I caught a glimpse of several high-end electronics and designer clothes before he quickly closed it. I grabbed his phone and took screenshots of the cart before he snatched it back. Those are for a friend, he stammered. Sure they are. Just like my credit card was for your medical bills, I replied. I'm sending these screenshots to the police right now unless you agree to return everything you took today. He agreed to go to the bank immediately. On the way, I noticed him secretly texting someone. I managed to see part of the message. Move the cash now before. I grabbed his phone from his hands and saw he'd been messaging 3 different friends, asking them to hide portions of the money he'd stolen from me. Seriously? You're trying to hide the money while sitting right next to me? I demanded. He claimed they were just friends he owed money to, but when I called the first person on his contact list, they immediately said, I already spent my share, sorry man. I hung up and glared at my brother. You split my stolen money with your friends? He suggested that maybe he could work off the debt by helping around my house, the same house where he'd stolen from my infant daughter's birthday gifts. I laughed in his face. You're never setting foot in my home again, I told him. At the bank, he withdrew $1,200 and handed it to me. This is all I have left, he claimed. Show me your online banking. Now, I wasn't buying his act anymore. Reluctantly, he logged into his account on his phone. I saw several large transfers to an online gambling site made just hours after he'd stolen my card. He'd blown through thousands of dollars in a single gambling session. I was trying to double it, he explained. I thought I could win back enough to pay you and keep some for myself. Just give me a few more days and I'll win it back. I called my wife to update her on the situation. Her response floored me. He just texted me asking for a small loan to help him out of a jam, she said. He said not to tell you because you were already stressed enough. I confronted him immediately. You tried to manipulate my wife behind my back while sitting right here pretending to cooperate with me? That's when the waterworks started. He broke down crying, saying his life was falling apart and he desperately needed help. I might have felt a twinge of sympathy if I hadn't noticed him secretly recording our conversation on his phone. I snatched it away and found he was gathering material to post on social media, already having shared edited clips painting himself as the victim. Delete those posts, now, I demanded. I already have people willing to help me because they see how cruel you're being, he said, showing me the comments where mutual friends and relatives were expressing concern and offering support. I spent the next hour calling family members to explain what was really happening. Most were confused, having only heard his twisted version of events. Some didn't believe me, thinking I was being too harsh on my troubled little brother. While I was on the phone with our aunt, my phone beeped with a call waiting. It was the bank's fraud department. They'd confirmed the unauthorized use of my card based on the timing and location data. I finally had concrete proof that couldn't be dismissed as a misunderstanding. Armed with this confirmation, I updated the police report and provided the additional evidence. The officer called me back later that day to say they had enough to formally charge my brother with theft and fraud. Somehow my brother found out about the charges because he showed up at my house unannounced that evening. I didn't want to deal with him alone, so I texted my neighbor James to come over while I talked to my brother on the front porch. James and I had become friends since moving into our house, and he was aware of my family situation. I came to apologize, my brother claimed, though I noticed his eyes scanning my living room, likely looking for valuable items. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, suggesting we talk on the porch instead. He handed me a folded piece of paper. I wrote you an apology letter. I opened it, expecting some genuine remorse. Instead, it was a manipulative note about how I'd always had it easier than him, how our parents favored me, and how I owed him support because that's what family does. I suddenly started recording our conversation on my phone, suspecting he might try to twist my words later. I have a plan to pay you back everything, he said. I just need a small loan to get this business opportunity off the ground. It's a guaranteed return in 3 months. Let me get this straight, I said, barely containing my anger. You stole thousands from me, and your solution is for me to give you more money? When he realized I wasn't falling for it, he switched tactics. If you press charges, I'll tell mom and dad about how you used to hit me when we were kids. I'll tell everyone what an abusive brother you really were. Go ahead, I replied calmly. I pulled out a folder from beside the front door. I'd actually prepared for this moment. Here's a documented history of your schemes dating back to when we were children. The nanny cam footage, police reports, bank statements, testimonials from friends who witnessed your behavior, and screenshots of you admitting to the theft in texts. Show this to whoever you want. Seeing the folder shocked him into a rare moment of honesty. I've always been jealous of you, he admitted quietly. You've always had everything so easy. But the moment passed quickly. I have dirt on you too, he claimed, though the desperation in his voice made it clear he was bluffing. This is your last chance, I told him. Return every cent you stole, get professional help for whatever is wrong with you, and maybe we can eventually have some kind of relationship again. He actually laughed in my face. You'll never see that money again, and if you press charges, I'll make sure your life becomes a living hell. Then we have nothing more to discuss, I said. I'm pressing charges regardless of any family connection. We're done. You'll never find me if I don't want to be found, he threatened. What he didn't know was that I'd already spoken to his employer and landlord. With the police report filed, his options for hiding were limited. I'd also frozen my credit and set up alerts for any new accounts opened in my name, just in case he tried to commit identity theft with the information he had already gathered. I called our parents that night and laid out everything with concrete evidence. They were devastated, but still suggested we try to handle things as a family without involving the legal system. He's already stolen thousands of dollars, accessed my personal accounts, and threatened to make my life hell, I explained. This went beyond family matter the moment he committed multiple felonies. My brother tried one last tactic over the next few days, sending mutual friends to reason with me. Our childhood friend Marcus showed up, saying my brother was sorry and wanted to make amends. Has he told you exactly what happened? I asked. He said there was a misunderstanding about money he thought you'd agreed to give him, Marcus replied. I invited Marcus inside and showed him the evidence I had collected, the police reports, bank statements with locations and timestamps, screenshots of threatening messages, and the nanny cam footage from years ago. The documentation painted a clear picture of my brother's pattern of theft and manipulation over time. By the end, Marcus was visibly shaken. I had no idea, he admitted. He made it sound like you were being unreasonable over a small loan. As Marcus was leaving, he hesitated at the door. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but he mentioned he's planning to leave town tomorrow, going to stay with some cousin in Arizona until things blow over. I immediately called the police with this information. The officer told me they couldn't arrest him without a warrant, which was still being processed. They suggested I might be able to recover some money through small claims court, regardless of the criminal case outcome. Over the next few days, I gathered all my financial records while waiting for the criminal case to proceed. The bank had provisionally credited back some of the stolen funds, but nearly half was still missing. I filed paperwork for small claims court and had my brother served with papers at his last known address. He didn't show up for the court date, of course. The judge granted a default judgment in my favor for the full amount plus court costs. Now I just had to collect, which I knew would be the hard part. Armed with the court judgment, I went to the restaurant where he had worked, hoping to garnish his wages. The manager informed me he'd quit without notice the previous week. Another dead end. I decided a more aggressive approach was needed. I hired a private investigator, nothing fancy, just a retired hired cop who did this work on the side for reasonable rates. Within 3 days, he located my brother working under the table at a bar across town. Since he was being paid in cash, wage garnishment wouldn't work. I was running out of options when I remembered something. My brother had posted photos of a new ride on social media a few weeks before the theft. He'd somehow financed a used car despite his terrible credit. I checked with the DMV and discovered the car was co-registered with our mother as the co-signer. This gave me leverage. I called our mother and told her everything I discovered. She was reluctant to get involved, still seeing this as a dispute between her sons rather than a criminal matter. He's working for cash to avoid paying me back the money he stole, I explained. He's violated a court order and is still driving a car you co-signed for. If he gets into an accident or gets arrested, you're financially responsible for that car. This finally got through to her. She agreed to help by threatening to report the car as stolen if he didn't cooperate. It was the first time she'd taken a firm stance with him in his entire life. My brother retaliated by posting more manipulative content online about his abusive older brother trying to ruin his life over a misunderstanding. I countered by posting the court judgment publicly, tagging everyone who had commented supportively on his posts. The public exposure forced him to contact me directly for the first time since our confrontation. He offered to return half the remaining money if I would take down my posts about the court judgment. Full amount or nothing, I replied. I'll remove the posts after I receive payment. He agreed to meet me at a bank the following day to transfer the first payment, but when he showed up, he only had a quarter of what he promised. I walked away without accepting it. A week passed with no contact. Then late one night, he called claiming he had the full amount. He insisted I come alone to an industrial area after midnight to get it. I laughed and hung up. I texted him the address of the police station and said that's the only place I would meet him. Surprisingly, he agreed. The next day, I arrived at the police station early and explained the situation to the officer at the desk. When my brother arrived, he had a cashier's check for the full amount. I was shocked he'd actually brought the money. The officer on duty recognized my brother from the reports I'd filed. Aren't you the subject of a fraud investigation? He asked casually. My brother paled visibly. He tried to play it off as a misunderstanding between brothers, but the officer wasn't buying it. It was just a mix-up with borrowing his card, my brother claimed. I played the recording from our porch conversation where he clearly stated, "You'll never see that money again." The evidence was overwhelming. The officer asked my brother to wait a moment and stepped away to make a call. Minutes later, 2 more officers appeared. They informed my brother that there was an active warrant for his arrest related to the credit card fraud in violation of court orders. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at me with genuine shock. He never believed there would be real consequences for his actions. For the first time in his life, he was facing the results of his choices without anyone to bail him out. Our parents called me that evening, practically hysterical. "How could you let them arrest your brother? He's family," our mother cried. "I didn't let them arrest him," I explained. "He committed multiple crimes and has been avoiding the consequences. The police were doing their job. They begged me to drop the charges, saying family should work things out privately. I was torn between family loyalty and the knowledge that my brother would never change without real consequences. After much consideration, I proposed a compromise to the prosecutor. The charges would be reduced if my brother completed financial counseling, addiction treatment for his gambling problem, and community service. The prosecutor agreed, as it was a first offense, on paper at least, and the courts were backlogged. My brother initially balked at the deal, insisting he wasn't a criminal and didn't need treatment. After a night in holding, however, he changed his tune and signed the agreement. The money was returned to me through the court, and my brother was released to begin his counseling and community service. I felt relieved that he was finally facing consequences while also getting the help he needed. For about 3 weeks, things were quiet. Reports from his probation officer indicated he was attending his required sessions and completing his community service hours. I started to think maybe this wake-up call had actually gotten through to him. Then I received a disturbing call from an unknown number. When I answered, a rough voice asked, "Is this the brother of Jake?" Jake being my brother's name. "Who's asking?" I replied cautiously. "I'm his cellmate from when he was locked up," the voice explained. "I thought you should know he's planning something once he completes this program. He talks about you all the time, man. Says you're going to pay for embarrassing him." I refused to engage further, suspecting this might be another of my brother's manipulations, getting someone to call and scare me as a form of revenge. I dismissed the call and tried to put it out of my mind, but 3 nights later I woke to the sound of glass breaking. Someone had smashed all the windows in my car parked in the driveway. I checked my security cameras and saw a familiar figure, Tyler, my brother's friend from the restaurant. I reported the vandalism to the police with the camera footage as evidence. The officer explained they could charge Tyler with property damage, but it would likely only result in a fine. The connection to my brother would be difficult to prove unless Tyler admitted it. Realizing I needed better security, I immediately upgraded my home system, adding cameras with better night vision and motion sensors around the property. I also installed a dash cam in my car that would record even when the vehicle was parked. A few days later, I received notification that my brother had completed the initial assessment phase of his program and was being released from daily monitoring. This was earlier than I'd expected, and it made me uneasy. I warned my wife and texted our neighbors to keep an eye out for any suspicious activity. For a week, nothing happened. I started thinking maybe the cellmate call was just a scam after all. Then I received a certified letter from a law firm I'd never heard of, claiming my brother was suing me for defamation based on my social media posts about the theft and court judgment. The claim was ridiculous. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation, but I'd still need to respond and potentially hire a lawyer to defend myself. This was clearly his new tactic. If he couldn't take my money directly, he'd force me to spend it on legal fees. I found an affordable lawyer who specialized in defamation cases. She reassured me the case had no merit and would likely be dismissed quickly. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean it won't cost you time and money to defend, she explained. The filing fees alone to respond will be several $100s. So he's found a legal way to drain my finances, I realized. Essentially, yes, we can file a countersuit for legal expenses, but that would extend the process and cost you more upfront. I decided to gather more evidence of his pattern of harassment first. I started documenting every interaction, threat, and incident meticulously. Little did I know how soon this documentation would prove necessary. 2 days later, I received a panicked call from my wife. My brother had shown up at our daughter's daycare claiming to be authorized to pick her up. Thankfully, the staff followed proper protocol and called my wife to verify before releasing our daughter. He told them he was her uncle and that we had asked him to pick her up because you were in an accident and I was meeting you at the hospital, my wife explained, her voice shaking with anger and fear. I immediately drove to the daycare center and added explicit written instructions to our daughter's file prohibiting anyone but my wife and me from picking her up under any circumstances. That evening, I sent my brother a text. "Stay away from my daughter. Attempting to take her from daycare cross every line. The staff have been shown your photo and instructed to call the police if you appear again." His response came quickly. "I just wanted to see my niece. You're keeping her from her family. That's cruel." I had to explain to our parents why I was keeping my brother away from his niece. They suggested family counseling to resolve our issues. I didn't trust my brother to be honest in a group therapy setting, but agreed to start with individual sessions. The therapist I saw helped me understand that my brother likely had deeper issues than I realized, possibly a personality disorder that drove his manipulative behavior. She emphasized that while this might explain his actions, it didn't excuse them, and it wasn't my responsibility to fix him. "The most important thing you can do is set clear boundaries and enforce them consistently," she advised. Following this advice, I drafted a formal letter outlining exactly what contact was acceptable, none at this point, and what would happen if he violated these boundaries, immediate legal action. I sent copies to him, our parents, and kept one for my records. During a conversation with my mother a few days later, she inadvertently revealed that my father had loaned my brother money for his legal fees in the defamation case against me. This violated the conditions of his reduced charges, which specified he couldn't receive financial support for legal actions related to the original crime. I faced a difficult decision: report this violation to his probation officer, which could send him to jail, or let it slide and potentially enable more manipulation. I decided to warn him first. I texted, "I know Dad is funding your lawsuit against me. That violates your probation terms. Drop the lawsuit or I'll have to report it." His response was a series of screenshots, personal information he'd gathered about my coworkers, including their addresses and family details. The implied threat was clear. If I reported him, he would harass the people I worked with. This escalation forced me to alert alert my boss about potential harassment. Mark had always been a reasonable manager, but I worried how this would affect his perception of me professionally. I need to give you a heads up about a personal situation that might affect the workplace, I began during our next one-on-one meeting. I explained the situation as concisely as possible. To my relief, Mark was understanding and immediately offered to have IT security strengthen our systems against potential social engineering attempts. Family stuff can get messy, he said. Let me know if you need any support or time off to deal with this. Despite Mark's discretion, word spread through office gossip. I noticed colleagues glancing my way during meetings or suddenly changing topics when I joined them for lunch. I became increasingly self-conscious, wondering if they were judging me based on this family drama. I tried to focus on work, but the stress was taking a toll. Then one morning, I received urgent messages from several colleagues asking why I was sending them strange friend requests and inappropriate messages on social media. My brother had created fake profiles impersonating me on multiple platforms. He'd used my photos and work information to make the accounts look legitimate, then sent bizarre messages to my colleagues, clients, and industry contacts. I spent hours reporting the fake accounts and warning my professional network about the impersonation. Most platforms removed the accounts quickly, but not before significant damage was done to my professional reputation. The impersonation finally crossed a legal line that the police took seriously. Then they contacted my brother about it. He claimed it was just a prank between brothers. The investigating officer requested I come in for a formal interview to assess the situation. During the interview, I presented all the documented evidence of harassment, from the credit card theft to the fake social media accounts. The officer suggested getting a restraining order rather than pursuing more criminal charges, given the complexities of family relationships. A restraining order gives us clear grounds to act if he contacts you or comes near your home or workplace, she explained. It creates a paper trail and gives you legal protection. I filed for a temporary restraining order that same day. The court granted it, prohibiting my brother from contacting me, my wife, or my daughter in any way, or coming within 500 feet of our home, workplaces, or my daughter's school. Less than a day after being served with the order, my brother violated it by sending messages through our mother. She called me, uncomfortably relaying that Jake wants you to know he's sorry about the social media thing and wants to work things out. I had to explain to her that passing messages made her complicit in violating the restraining order. Mom, I know you want us to reconcile, but he's using you to get around a legal order. If you continue to pass messages, you could actually get in trouble too. This was a turning point for my mother. She finally recognized the seriousness of the situation and agreed to attend a support group for families dealing with similar issues. The group helped her understand she wasn't helping my brother by enabling his behavior. She was actually preventing him from facing the consequences that might motivate real change. The hearing for the permanent restraining order was scheduled for the following week. To my surprise, my brother showed up with an attorney from a prestigious firm, one I knew charged several $100s per hour. Given his financial situation, I suspected he had accessed more of our parents' retirement savings to pay for this representation. I had prepared thoroughly for the hearing with all my documented evidence organized chronologically. My brother's lawyer portrayed him as a struggling young man being persecuted by his financially successful, vindictive older brother. My client simply wants to maintain a relationship with his family, the lawyer argued smoothly. These brothers had normal sibling rivalries that have been exaggerated by the petitioner, who seems determined to prevent any reconciliation. I maintained my composure while being painted as the villain, focusing on presenting the evidence rather than reacting emotionally. When my turn came, I methodically walked through the pattern of theft, fraud, and harassment with documentation for each incident. The judge seemed skeptical at first, asking pointed questions about why family matters had escalated to this point. But then something unexpected happened. My brother lost his temper during cross-examination. When I described the incident at my daughter's daycare, he interrupted loudly. She's my niece. I have a right to see her. You're poisoning her against me just like you've poisoned everyone else. The outburst continued, despite his lawyer's attempts to calm him, culminating in him pointing at me and shouting, "This isn't over. Restraining order or not, you'll regret this." His own behavior in court did more to strengthen my case than anything I could have said. The judge granted the permanent restraining order, valid for 3 years, with provisions for renewal if necessary. As we left the courthouse, I felt a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. I had the legal protection I needed, but my brother's final glare as he was led away by his attorney contained pure hatred. The restraining order was just a piece of paper. Enforcing it would be the real challenge. I upgraded our home security system again, adding cameras that uploaded directly to cloud storage in case of tampering. We created a detailed safety plan with our daughter's school and daycare, including photographs of my brother and clear instructions that he was not authorized for any contact. For several weeks, things were relatively peaceful. No sightings of my brother, no strange messages, no new fake accounts. I started to relax slightly, hoping the restraining order had actually worked. Then our home internet began behaving strangely. Devices would disconnect randomly, and our smart home features would turn on and off without anyone activating them. I ran a network scan and discovered an unknown device had accessed our Wi-Fi. I immediately changed all passwords, enabled MAC address filtering, and upgraded to a more secure router. When tracing the breach, I found the unauthorized access had come from a laptop registered to my cousin Alicia. I called Alicia to ask if she'd been near our house recently. She seemed confused, then mentioned that she'd loaned her laptop to my brother the previous week because his was being repaired. It became clear my brother was finding loopholes in the restraining order by using other family members' devices and accounts. I had to make the difficult decision to restrict information sharing with extended family members who might inadvertently or intentionally help him circumvent the legal barriers. My wife suggested we consider moving to a new home unknown to my brother. The idea had merit, a fresh start somewhere he couldn't find us easily. But our daughter had just started school and was finally making friends after our previous security disruptions. Uprooting her again seemed unfair when she was just beginning to feel stable. We decided to stay, but significantly upgraded our security. I installed a comprehensive system with motion sensors, glass break detectors, and cameras covering every approach to our home. We also implemented a strict information diet with family members, sharing no details about our schedules or activities. A few days later, our new security system alerted us to someone tampering with our mailbox at 3 a.m. The camera captured only a hooded figure, face obscured. I installed a better camera focused specifically on the mailbox, with enhanced night vision capabilities. 2 days later, the improved camera caught my brother clearly stealing mail from our box. I immediately reported the theft to the police, providing the video evidence. By the time officers arrived, he had already left the area. They filed a report for federal mail theft, a serious charge that could result in significant penalties. I also reported the mail theft to the postal inspector, who opened an investigation. They explained the process would take time, so I immediately rented a secure post office box for all important mail and set up electronic delivery for as many documents as possible. As my brother's court date for violating the restraining order approached, he began spreading rumors among mutual friends that I was mentally unstable and had been making up stories about him for years. Several family friends contacted me, concerned about these claims. I had to decide whether to address each rumor individually or focus my energy on the legal process. I chose to concentrate on the court case and ignore the rumors. But then I discovered my brother had created a crowdfunding page claiming he was being persecuted by an abusive older brother and needed money for legal defense. The page included twisted versions of our childhood stories and outright lies about the recent events. I reported the fraudulent fundraiser to the platform with evidence of the court judgments against him. They removed the page, but not before he'd collected several $1,000s from sympathetic strangers who'd been moved by his fabricated story of persecution. This demonstrated just how effectively he could manipulate people who had no prior knowledge of our history. His ability to present himself as a victim while actively harassing me was truly disturbing. The day before his court appearance for the restraining order violation, I received an email that appeared to be a genuine apology. He claimed he was getting professional help, recognized his problems with gambling and lying, and wanted to make amends. The email seemed sincere at first glance, until I read the closing paragraphs, which contained subtle threats disguised as worst-case scenarios about what might happen if I continued pursuing legal action against him. The message alternated between apparent remorse and implicit threats in a way that was clearly designed to confuse and manipulate. I forwarded the email to my lawyer as additional evidence of his continued manipulation tactics. We added it to the documentation for the court hearing. hearing, the judge found my brother guilty of violating the restraining order based on the mailbox video and the messages sent through our mother. However, instead of the jail time I'd expected, the judge ordered mandatory therapy sessions and electronic monitoring. I felt both vindicated that he'd been found guilty and concerned that the consequences weren't severe enough to deter future violations. For the next month, the electronic ankle monitor seemed to keep my brother in check. No suspicious activities, no harassment, no unexpected appearances. I began to cautiously hope that the combination of legal consequences and therapy might finally be making a difference. Then late one night, I received a panicked call from our parents. My brother had disappeared, leaving his phone and wallet at their house where he'd been staying. More alarmingly, he'd somehow removed the electronic monitoring device, which was found cut off in his bedroom. I immediately contacted his probation officer, who confirmed the monitoring system had gone offline several hours earlier. They'd already issued an alert to local law enforcement, but had no information about his current location. We increased our home security vigilance, and I warned my wife to be especially careful when out with our daughter. 3 tense days passed with no sign of my brother. Then my wife received an email containing recent photos of our daughter on the playground at her school. There was no message, just the images, a clear implied threat. We immediately contacted the school and police about the threatening email. The school implemented emergency security protocols, including assigning staff to watch our daughter at all times and restricting outdoor activities. The police increased patrols in our neighborhood, but explained they couldn't provide continuous protection. Our daughter, perceptive despite her young age, sensed something was wrong. She asked why a teacher was always sitting near her at lunch and why she couldn't play on the big playground anymore. We had to carefully explain the situation in age-appropriate terms. Someone who isn't supposed to be around us might try to talk to you at school, I explained. The teachers are just making sure everyone stays safe. Is it the bad uncle? She asked, surprising me with her insight. We'd never called my brother bad in front of her, but children pick up more than adults realize. Yes, sweetie. Uncle Jake is having some problems right now, and he's not allowed to see us until he gets better. If you ever see him, you need to tell a teacher right away, okay? My wife's brother Keith, a former military policeman, offered to stay with us temporarily. Having an additional adult in the house, especially one with security training, provided some peace of mind during this uncertain time. While Keith was staying with us, we received a disturbing package. It contained several of my childhood possessions, baseball cards, a trophy from middle school, photos of our family, all destroyed or defaced. The return address led to an abandoned building, another dead end in trying to locate my brother. The psychological toll of this ongoing harassment was affecting my work performance and straining my marriage. My wife and I were both constantly on edge, jumping at unexpected noises and checking security cameras obsessively. Then we received an unexpected call from Tyler, my brother's friend, who had previously helped him hide. I can't be part of this anymore, Tyler said. Jake's gone too far. He's staying at Dylan's hunting cabin up north, but he'll kill me if he knows I told you. So you can't tell anyone where you got this information. I agreed, but asked why he was suddenly willing to help after participating in my brother's schemes for so long. He's talking crazy, man, saying stuff about making you pay that doesn't sound like pranks anymore. I signed up for helping a friend get back at his brother, not whatever this has turned into. Tyler provided the cabin location, but made me promise not to involve police. I pretended to agree while planning to report everything immediately after the call. I contacted the authorities with the cabin information, and a police team was dispatched to the remote location. They found evidence my brother had been staying there, food wrappers, makeshift bedding, and disturbingly, a wall covered with photos of me and my family, news clippings about restraining orders, and what appeared to be written plans for various scenarios. But my brother himself was gone, apparently having left just hours before the police arrived. They issued a wider alert for his apprehension, now considering him potentially dangerous based on the materials found at the cabin. That night, our security system alerted us to movement in the backyard. Keith and I checked the camera feed, but the screen suddenly went dark. My wife called the police while Keith and I carefully investigated, armed with baseball bats. We discovered all the exterior cameras had been spray painted black. As we checked the garage door, we heard noises from inside. We immediately retreated to the house, locked all doors, and waited for police. The police arrived quickly with several units and searched our property thoroughly, but found no one. The security system showed the cameras had been disabled at 2:17 a.m., but the motion sensors hadn't been triggered again after we'd gone back inside. Whoever had been there, presumably my brother, had fled when they heard the police sirens. We spent a sleepless night wondering what he had planned before being interrupted. The next morning, contractors arrived to repair the security cameras, while Keith and I took turns keeping watch. Around noon, I received a text from an unknown number. Playground, 3 p.m. Come alone, where everyone will know what really happened that summer. The message patterns and reference to that summer, when I'd supposedly broken my brother's arm, though the actual story was that he'd fallen from a tree while I was supposed to be watching him, confirmed it was from my brother. I immediately contacted the police, who suggested wearing a wire to the meeting. They were concerned about my safety, but agreed this might be the best opportunity to apprehend him. We developed a plan with plainclothes officers positioned strategically around the playground. I arrived at our childhood playground at the appointed time, my heart pounding despite the knowledge that officers were nearby. I waited nearly an hour with no sign of my brother, beginning to think it had been another manipulation tactic. As I was about to leave, a figure emerged from behind the old slide. My brother, but nearly unrecognizable. He was thin to the point of gauntness, his clothes dirty and wrinkled, his eyes wild with a combination of exhaustion and something more disturbing. Instead of feeling angry, my first reaction was concern. He looked seriously unwell, not just physically, but mentally. This wasn't the calculated manipulator I'd come to expect. He appeared genuinely unstable. He launched into what seemed like a practiced speech about how I'd ruined his life and turned everyone against him. But when I simply asked, why can't you just leave my family alone? The script seemed to fall apart. For perhaps the first time in our adult lives, his facade cracked completely. He broke down in what appeared to be genuine emotion, rather than his usual calculated display. You've always been better than me at everything, he said. Everyone loves you. Everyone trusts you. No matter what I do, I can't catch up. For the first time, he admitted to his jealousy and resentment without the usual manipulation. He talked about feeling like he was in my shadow from childhood, how our parents' pride in my accomplishments had felt like criticism of his failures. But then he pivoted to blaming his actions on childhood trauma and claimed our parents had always favored me unfairly. I acknowledged that our childhood had its difficulties, but refused to accept that as justification for his criminal behavior as an adult. I've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and gambling addiction, he revealed. The therapists gave me medication, but it made me feel worse, so I stopped taking it. I saw an opening for a potential resolution. I'll help you find treatment that works better for you, I offered. But first, you need to turn yourself in. You've violated your probation, removed your monitoring device, and broken the restraining order multiple times. Let's start by fixing those problems. Then we can work on getting you proper help. He seemed to consider this seriously, looking at me with what appeared to be clarity for the first time in years. Then his expression changed as he glanced over my shoulder, spotting one of the plainclothes officers who had shifted position. You brought the cops? He hissed, panic replacing the momentary vulnerability. It's always the same with you. Pretending to help while setting me up, he darted away toward the wooded area behind the playground. The officers emerged from their positions and quickly apprehended him without incident. As they handcuffed him, he looked back at me with a mixture of betrayal and resignation. Please, tell them it was a misunderstanding, he begged. Tell them I wasn't running. I shook my head. I can't do that, Jake. This has to stop. The officers led him to a patrol car while reading him his rights. One detective stayed behind to get my statement. As I described the interaction, I felt an odd mixture of relief and sadness watching the car drive away with my brother in the back seat. In the weeks that followed, my brother accepted a plea deal requiring extended inpatient psychiatric treatment, followed by a supervised halfway house program and strict probation. The alternative was significant jail time for the multiple violations. Our parents initially pressured me to put this behind us once he began treatment. They suggested I should immediately restore contact and forgive and forget as soon as he showed the first first signs of improvement. That's not how this works, I explained firmly. Forgiveness might be possible eventually, but that doesn't mean removing boundaries. Even if he gets better, our relationship will never be what you're imagining. 6 months into his treatment program, his doctors reported significant progress. They suggested I might consider participating in family therapy sessions to address our long-standing conflicts in a controlled environment. After discussing it thoroughly with my wife and my own therapist, I cautiously agreed to attend a single session with clear boundaries and my wife's full support. I went in prepared for the usual manipulation, but found something unexpected. My brother looked healthier physically, his previously wild eyes now clear and focused. When he spoke, he didn't launch into accusations or justifications. Instead, he took responsibility for his actions without deflecting blame. I've hurt you and your family repeatedly, he said. I've stolen from you, lied to you, manipulated you, and threatened you. There's no excuse for any of it. I don't expect forgiveness, and I understand why you need to keep your distance. I just want you to know I'm finally getting real help and taking it seriously. The therapist guided us through a structured conversation, preventing either of us from falling into old patterns. By the end of the session, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not a desire to immediately restore our relationship, but a cautious hope that perhaps real change was possible. As I left the treatment facility, I realized this was the first interaction with my brother in years that hadn't left me feeling drained, manipulated, or angry. There would be no quick reconciliation, no immediate restoration of trust that had been shattered so completely. But perhaps there could eventually be a new kind of relationship, built on honest communication and firm boundaries. For the first time, I felt we might both be able to heal from the damage and move forward, not as the close brothers our parents wished for, but as individuals who could interact without causing each other further harm. It was a modest hope, but after everything we'd been through, it felt like a significant step toward breaking the toxic cycle that had defined our relationship since childhood.